hearing all about it. So the floor is yours, Paul. Thank you very much for joining us. And we have currently 59 people on the call. So you've got an audience. Fire away.
I love an audience. I will, however, hand over to Aggie Reifman, to give a bit of an introduction about AIA and the Environmental Accounting Platform for a bit of context.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, go for it.
Thanks, Paul. I'm Aggie Reifman. I've been looking after the strategy for the accounting platform. Hopefully, I'll be able to share my screen. See if that works. Can everyone see that?
I think we're about to. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I can see a few people down the side. I think if you raise your hand, you'll pop up to the top and I'll be able to see you. So feel free to ask any questions, and we'll obviously have time at the end. So I'm just going to quickly run through what this platform is, because that context will help you understand why it's been built the way it has. And then Paul's going to give us a detailed demo on how to use it. So very quickly, the AIA is a company that was established by the 15 RDCs to facilitate joint investment and collaboration in big cross-sectoral opportunities and challenges. So climate is obviously one of those. Our mandate is the whole of agriculture, fisheries and forestry. So that's why you will see those calculators that we have in this platform extending beyond the farm gate. And importantly, we are an independent, not-for-profit company. This means that what we built was for the benefit of Australian agriculture. We were not looking to build a commercial offering. We were looking to do something that filled the gap, and that will become evident in what we have done. So our goal with this platform was to provide Australian agriculture, fisheries and forestry with an accessible and standardised approach to carbon calculation. We did this by starting with a discovery. So we undertook 140 interviews. We looked at what was happening in the international markets and we analysed the tools that were available. And what we learnt was that carbon accounting is confusing and cumbersome. A lot of people were using the GAF tools in Australia, but they did require knowledge. As the people on this call would know very well, you can't just pick up one of those Excel spreadsheets and run with it without some training and understanding of how they work. A few companies have digitised some of those GAF sheets, but keeping the GAF up to date is a constant piece of work. So as the factors are updated, as new research comes through, the GAF updates, and that needs to be updated in any software system. We know producers want to keep data where it is and use it within the platforms that they already use and trust. And we know that this lack of consistent and standardised approach leads to confusion and fragmentation, which doesn't help us get across the line with getting more and more producers to use these tools. So what we did is we built, firstly, an engine. So we took all the GAF calculators and we digitised them into an engine that anyone can plug into. We did this so that there would be a place that gives you a common, consistent and standardised way to calculate that footprint. And it was done in a way that's pre-competitive. So instead of building a commercial platform to compete with other platforms, we have made that calculator engine available to every platform. So what that looks like practically is there is a front end and a back end. The front end is what Paul will be demonstrating today. That front end is free for producers. So the RDCs backed the build of this, and it's important that producers can access these calculators for free to do their carbon footprint. And you'll see from the list of calculators we have, some of those commodities are quite small in Australia. They're not commodities that necessarily commercial organisations are really targeting in terms of providing that calculator. So we need that front end to be there to be that default that any producer can use for any mixed commodities, including the smaller ones. And then we've got the back end, which is that pre-competitive engine. So all of those GAF tools are sitting there in the back end and can be connected to through API. So you can use our calculators in our platform, but you can also use them in any platform that connects to that back end engine. What we did to ensure that this was standardised was work with those RDCs so that we've got that industry backing and the research coming through industry. And we set up a technical advisory panel. So you'll all be familiar with Richard Eckard, who created these tools. We've also got Dr. Annette Cowie, Dr. Dan Schwartz, and Professor Peter Grace sitting on that panel. So any questions we have, anytime updates need to happen, anytime new research comes through, it goes to that panel. It is then pushed into GAF and into our platform at the same time. And our front end is NFF data code certified to give producers that comfort that that data stays with them and it isn't used for other purposes. So these are the commodities that are covered in the calculator. So the forestry pathway is still in development. Otherwise, all of those are now live with wine, rice and aquaculture recently released in beta version. So we're still collecting feedback on those. This is just a diagram of how you can access those calculators. So producers and users across the supply chain can either directly access those if they choose to connect to an API, or they can come online through our front end that Paul will demonstrate in a minute, or they can come through any software that connects to that API. So if their farm management software connects to our calculator engine, they can be using those calculators within that farm management software. Lastly, it's probably important to note that working together, we managed to get a 17:1 benefit cost ratio in this project with an approximate net benefit of 84 million and a saving of 52 million. So quite an accomplishment, a big piece of work that's come out of this for the benefit of industry. I will pass over to Paul in a minute to give us a demo of how the platform works. Just want to check if anyone's got any questions about AIA or how we've designed this platform or how it can be accessed. Over to you, Paul. Oh, sorry, got a question from Sarah.
Yeah, just a question. I know that GRDC is about to launch its own calculator. When I thought it was its own calculator, is it launching its own calculator, or is it just interfaced, taking it directly to the AIA page?
Yeah, so if any commodity specific platforms will be connecting into the engine, so using the same GAF calculator. If there are commodity specific updates coming through, those are often done actually on that Excel spreadsheet level, and then they will come through into the GAF spreadsheet, which currently is published on the PIG site, and then it also comes through to the calculator at the same time. So we're working with the RDCs to make that seamless, but there could be commodity specific research and additions coming out of each of the RDCs, because that's obviously what they do. They're pushing that research in their area.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so a great example of that is MLA had contributed research to an update of the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory around enteric methane. And just today, actually, we've been chatting with Dan and Richard Eckard about, okay, how we're going to get this into GAF and then into the EAP. So there's a really great pipeline now from the RDCs coming through via the technical advisory panel into GAF and the Environmental Accounting Platform.
And sorry, just another question. So when they go access it through, say, GRDC, will the branding still be the same so they can see that they're on the AIA platform, just so that growers aren't getting confused as to having another calculator out there?
Yeah, so anyone who connects to our engine gets given a Powered by AIA logo that goes somewhere on their front end. So depending on how it's done, it will look like a different platform and it will have Powered by AIA on it. And so you know that the calculator you're connecting to is the calculator that sits behind the AIA platform. So in terms of versioning and what GAF spreadsheet is aligned to, that information can all be found on the AIA site or on the PICCC site right now. So that's how you know where that information is coming from, by looking for that logo.
Okay, thanks.
Jed, you've got a question?
Yep, thank you. Was AWI approached for some wool information, or did they say no, or has wool sort of slipped through because it's not a major industry?
So not all the RDCs invested in the build stage, but all of the calculators are in the platform. So you can do a wool calculation through the sheep calculator. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, Noel?
Most growers have never heard of AIA and don't know what a data guarantee by NFF means, so they're preferring the GAF calculators. Can you explain that in a bit more detail?
Yeah. So NFF has put out data code certification. They've got some very strict rules around what you can do with growers' data and how you can talk about what you do with growers' data and how you inform growers about what you do with their data. So in order to get that certification, we had to answer a lot of questions, pages and pages of Excel questions, to show them that we are transparent about what happens to that data. One of the requirements, and something AIA does anyway, is when you come and sign up to the website, you've obviously got terms and conditions, but you've also got a very clear box that tells you that we don't share your data, that your data stays within the platform, and it does give you an option to opt into having your data aggregated for research purposes. So that's clearly stated. So essentially that NFF data code certification gives growers comfort that we are very transparent about what we do with their data. And in our case, we do not share that data outside.
Just further to that as well, the back end, the calculator API that Aggie shared earlier, that stores zero data. So the AIA front end posts information to the back end to get a calculation. It gets the result back and no data is stored in that back end. So all of the integrators who are currently posting from their software to the calculator, none of that data is stored by the calculator as well. So it's very secure in that way. Okay, so no more questions for the moment. So can you see a big list of properties from the many, many demos that we've been doing?
Yes.
Yes, cool. All right, so grains and wagyu was one that I prepared earlier, so we'll come back to that one in a second, but we're going to create a new property now. So I'm assuming that most people here are involved in sort of training. So I'll be sort of skewing this the demo to sort of talk about the more training aspect of things. So I'm going to create my property. One thing that we need is a property boundary. And so if I was to zoom in a little bit further, I can start to see the cadastral land parcels. And so I can define my property's boundary by clicking on some parcels. They don't have to be joined with each other. Looks pretty good. So we now have our property. And we'll be using that to and that sort of thing. I'm going to give this property name, demo 1. And we're going to select which enterprises run here. So we can have a mixed enterprise operation. We can have a very mixed one and have everything from pork to eggs to rice to aquaculture. But we will just limit it to, let's say, sheep and grains, and maybe some sequestration planting as well. Cool. It's auto-detected the region being New South Wales, and I'm just going to answer a question about rainfall. We are planning on automatically detecting the rainfall, getting into historical bond data, but right now it's a main question. Cool. Here is our property. So the two main areas that we have is the data, so that is stuff that's going into the system, and then we have analysis, so that's the analytic output. So the first one of those is greenhouse gas emissions. We have other types of analysis that are in development around biodiversity, natural capital, chemical applications, water consumption, that sort of thing. In the data section, we have map shapes, business activities, and something that's new is products and commodities. So we'll start with map shapes. Map shapes is just a library of map shapes that we can create, that we can use later on, just to save a bit of time. So I'm going to create one here. Can also import KML if I want. So call that Central West paddock. And the type of shape this is can be a paddock, a painting area, a management area. So that's a painting area. And I can create a whole bunch of these. Products and commodities aren't really used yet in the sheep and beef and in grains. It's used for aquaculture and wine at the moment. Basically, that is I can define raw commodities or unpackaged commodities or packaged products, and then create processing activities and calculate the emissions of the processing. But we can still we can enter these once processing comes online for other commodities later on. So we unpackaged commodity, begin with the measurement as tonnes. And we can add a whole bunch of those and reference them later on. But the real work is happening in the business activities section. And here is where we enter information about our enterprises on the farm and our land management, our energy and commodity consumption, and then the allocations of these things to each other, because you might have a fuel purchase that is used for crops and birds and that sort of thing. You might have crops that are partially allocated to a herd that might be eating it. So I'll start with adding a grain crop. Crops are pretty straightforward. So one thing to consider here is all of these activities are currently strictly a 12-month period. It could be a calendar year, it could be a financial year. It could be starting in September, but it's 12 months long, and that's because the gas model being carbon accounting being a 12-month thing. I had a hand up for a second there.
Yeah, Paul, Erin has asked a question in the chat regarding the property boundaries. Is there any option to add shape files instead of KML to create management areas, e.g. John Deere Operations Centre doesn't do a KML export option.
Okay.
It does just shape files.
Yeah, definitely there's a lot of improvements that are on our roadmap. So KMZ would be the first one that we would do after KML. So we're actually updating our property boundary or that parcel layer. So adding these new things should be easier. So definitely shape files is on the list. We just sort of we've got lots of cool things that we want to add, and it's just a matter of prioritizing and fitting that work in. Yep, Sarah.
Hi, Paul. Are you able to just zoom in on your screen? Is that possible, just so the text is a little bit larger?
If I haven't really done this in a demo, making the text bigger.
Yes, that's
okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. So we can give this crop a name. 2024 wheat is one that's used a lot. And here we select just January 2024. So it's that 12-month period. I could do July to June. September to August calendar year is pretty common. So now we've got 3 sections here. What is the planting area and yield? How is the soil improvement? Chemicals were applied. Cropping and pasture is pretty straightforward. So I could type in the area planted in hectares, or I could select the area on the map. And I could draw it. I could upload a file, or because I put in a map shape earlier, just going to grab that. So we've got this little area here of 166 hectares. I'm going to select my crop type. These are all just the options that are available in the GAF spreadsheet. And the yield, I can just enter the total yield in tonnes for the year, or I could calculate the total using tonnes per hectare. So let's go 3.8. Here, you can specify whether it's irrigated and whether the crop is burnt. Zoom these on the little buttons. That's okay. Cool. So that's our yield and our soil improvement. Currently, this is just lime and fertilizer, which is grouped together. Eventually, we want to be able to include stuff like tillage. So that's part of that whole sort of research pipeline where we explore the materiality of new management methods on emissions and other sustainability topics, and we work with the technical advisory panel to work it through and then include it in here. But right now, we talk about soil improvement, or we're just talking about lime. So I can add a new application instance. I can give it a name and give it a month of application for data management purposes later on if I have a whole bunch of these applications and I want to look through and see which one I might want to edit. But the essential fields are what's the type, so is it dolomite or limestone? We are adding gypsum to this as well, in which case we'll have to change that. But right now it's lime and dolomite, and you mark per hectare in tonnes. If I check this box here, then I can specify an area, application area that is different to the planting area. So let's do that. It's getting into some precision ag. This is this section. Yeah. I could save another one, but I'll just save and go back. And fertilizer, choose my fertilizer type. Now this list of types is fairly limited, like it doesn't have product blends or anything like that. So I select a fertilizer type and then it displays the NPK and S values, and then I can specify the amount applied per hectare in kilograms. We are collaborating with lifecycles. We manage the AusLCI database on updating fertilizer, which lets us give custom blends and also specify the location that the fertilizer was purchased from, which is mainly Canada or China. And where you purchase your fertilizer from does have a pretty big impact on emissions, Scope 3 emissions. So watch this space, but right now this is how fertilizer is working. And chemicals works the same way. Herbicides, let's not do paraquat or diquat. Let's go Tiger-X, 14 kilograms. We will add another one actually. So let's go diquat. So one thing, I talked about chemical application earlier, because the grain producers have to declare whether they've applied certain chemicals on their crop when delivery happens. Capturing information like this sets us up for that sort of pesticides. We just do one more. These, bit of a mix there. So that's a crop. Pretty straightforward. I'll do a sheep herd. It's the same. Okay, so in my herd, I can specify who's in my breeding livestock, who's in my trading livestock, what shearing happened, and what who was fed what. So we've been doing a bit of a UI update. So in the cropping one, you've got menu items on the left. Here, the menu items are across the top, and these will be moved over to the left as time goes on. I'm going to switch on my breeding news. Now I can enter data in.
Oh, we've got a few questions.
Oh, okay, sure.
Erin, I think, is first.
I just had a quick question. So just back with the cropping side of things. So at the moment, if I'm using a compound fertilizer, is there an option that I can just manually enter the different percentages in if that's not in the list? Like if there's just an other option until they get the list set up?
There will be. The challenge that we've had is how to deal with your ammonium nitrate in scope 3. So there will be in the coming months, but not right now.
Yeah.
So one thing that you go, sorry.
And is that the same, like if someone's using a different product like urea sustain or like how does that, will that just be an option in the drop down list?
There is. So what we probably do to start with, and we're getting to future stuff, is to allow the custom NPKs and okay, and then work with the Melbourne Uni have got a fertilizer composition Excel file that could be referenced to enter those in for more specific products. But we do want to have lists of brands in here eventually. It's just been a matter of time and resources. And also what we offer here needs to be aligned with the gas spreadsheet. So just basically finding the time and resources to make that happen.
Yeah, that's okay. And then just a last question with the herbicides. So if I have a herbicide that is like a combination of two actives, how would I enter that in at the moment? Do I need to enter that as two separate actives, like as a split?
Yes. So there is an update that is on our staging site and is just about to be published live. We can just enter one active application for the entire year. We call that just per active, and then we've got an option of a single products application, which is what we have currently. So we'll plan to do the same thing for fertilizer as well. But right now, I can put in other for herbicides because it's just less complex than fertilizer, and you can just put in the percentage of active ingredient of the product used and then the amount applied. So you could do those maths in your head and put in one application, but you would probably go, let's call this one custom 1. Let's call it 32. And then I could go custom 2, 16. 16 as well. Does that would that work for what you need to do?
Yeah. Thanks for that. Cheers.
No worries. Any other questions while we're?
Yep, there's another one from Ivor.
Yep.
Thanks. It's actually Eva.
Sorry.
So that's all right. Everyone makes that mistake. A couple of things. So I'm probably jumping ahead here, but can you include irrigated cropping, so number of irrigations and systems and stuff like that?
Irrigation is currently very simple. Yes, no. So when working on the wine calculator, for a while there were different irrigation options available for wine. And so what's on our list of things to do is to dig into irrigation methods, like with tilling as well. Like what's the difference in leaching and runoff impacts if you have different irrigation types? Obviously, there would be a productivity to consumption difference as well for irrigation types. But yeah, right now it's just a yes or no. So if, let's say I wanted to save this first. So let's say I wanted to have, because I can have multiple crops. Let's say over 2024 I had irrigated and non-irrigated. I can just go to Dryland. Time frame, and then I would just put it next door. Assuming it's next door, it could be anywhere.
So it doesn't take into account irrigation type. So for irrigated cropping, you can have gravity fed versus centre pivot, obviously, which is pumped.
Yep. Yeah. So there is no there's no distinction between types of irrigation right now.
Okay. All right. That might be an issue because obviously a gravity system will have virtually no carbon emissions versus one that has pressurised water.
Is that because pressurised water is using pumps and pumps use fuel?
Yep. Yeah, using electricity or diesel to actually pressurise and pump the water, whereas a gravity-fed system just uses natural energy.
Okay, so I am going to skip ahead to something. So one thing that is in vineyard now that will be coming into other crops over time is more. So currently we have fuel purchases that we allocate, but in winery, let's just give this a better name. Winery, we have more questions. So these are things that will be coming into cropping, but currently they're just in wine and aquaculture. So what electricity fuel was used, how was waste managed, and we get into freight and transport. So in here, we ask, electricity was used, yes. Fuel used to power machinery or generate electricity. So if you've got pumps, then this is where you enter that information. So currently it's just a straight up how much diesel did you use?
Okay.
But we do have, and it's part of the new aquaculture and winery gas, is you will, in the GAF Excel file, you can say pump 1, and it uses X amount of fuel per hour, and it runs for how many hours and how many days, and it will estimate the usage, and we'll be bringing that into here as well. So that's how we're bringing it. So it's not pump irrigation, therefore emissions or fuel usage. It is, we've used fuel to power machinery or generate electricity. We've used fuel for vehicles or tractors, light aircraft if you're doing seeding. Probably not marine craft, but we are a broad church here in agriculture. So that's what's available in wine right now, and it will be coming into other cropping in the future. But right now, irrigation, that question around irrigation is just for leaching and runoff service.
Okay, all right. And I may have missed it at the beginning. I'm sorry if you've already said it. Does this then get saved? And so next year, instead of having to type everything in, I can just go back to that paddock and say, oh, I've changed the crop and this is whatever or other changes I've made? Or,
You could update it. We have specified exactly how duplicating an activity will work. So it's just a matter of, once again, time and resources on getting things on our roadmap built. But yeah, right now you can just edit an existing one or create a new one. With cropping, it's not so much work depending on how many applications of fertilizer and that sort of thing you have on. But with livestock, there's a bit more volatility. So we really prioritize getting the duplication done.
So, and so all of this is typed in and it's saved on this platform, is it?
Yes.
And then who owns all that data?
The farmer.
The farmer still owns it, and they're the only one because they'll have a secure login and everything like that.
That's right. They can enter. They can invite others to their team and give them access, but we don't manipulate any of this data or on-sell it. Aggie talked about our certification for the National Farms Federation Farm Data Code, which is pretty stringent. So yeah, the farmer owns and controls their data and controls the access to it.
Okay.
There are other systems around that are accessing our calculator API to run calculations. So if the farmer is already using those systems, then they can get these emissions calculations without having to enter the data in here. This platform exists to provide free access for farmers to calculate emissions if they don't have any other software systems in place.
Okay. Great, thank you.
No worries. Any other questions before we get stuck into sheet?
Well, there was one, but it seems to have disappeared. I think Stephanie maybe had a question. Changed your mind?
I did. Well, I did, but because it's not going to deal with irrigation, I actually can't use it for my growers anymore. So I don't have a question.
Okay.
It'd be great to, because we are constantly getting feedback and suggestions. So that helps us inform what to take to the technical advisory panel. So yeah, if you're able to shoot us an email or set up a chat, it'd be great to learn more about the limitation of how gas and by extension the EAP currently treats irrigation.
Yeah, hi Paul. What was those other systems that you mentioned before that a farmer could have access to that would that they could utilise this without entering the data in themselves?
Aggie, who are our integrators?
Yeah, so if you go to the AIA EAP website, you will have a list of all the integration partners, and that will continue to update. So their logos will continue to go up there as more software companies use that API. So it's probably the best place to check the most up-to-date list.
Thanks.
So providers like Map of Ag, Nutrien, Petri is another one. So getting into my herd. So this is the monthly livestock form for this class of sheep, which is our ewes. There's no sugarcoating it. There's a lot of information to ask. The pasture beef form has been updated to be more user-friendly than this, but this is the sheep one. So what we want to do is ask, firstly, how many were in the herd at the start of the month, and then what were the changes? Here we're going to put in, this is a sheep weight, let's say 150. And then we can enter in what changes happened to the herd. So did any were any born? Did any die? Did those into this class? Did they those out of this class? Were they transferred? That sort of thing. So let's say 10 aged in. And then we can also nominate some purchases or sales. So let's say we purchased 10. They came 25 on average. And let's say 5 of those were pure bred merinos. And so all of these changes adjust the number of head in our bunch over time. Because we've got ewes here, we're asking how many of these ewes were lambing and what were the seasonal lambing rates. So let's say 80% of our ewes had babies in August, and 10% had babies, and the lambing rate was. So this is all aligned with GAF. Good to go. Cool. Trading livestock is identical to breeding livestock. It's just for those animals that you bring in, fatten up and sell. And then wool, we can add shearing events. So we select what month the shearing took place, the class of sheep that was shorn, and then we can say we've got 100 animals for that month that we can choose. If I try to go over that, it says, hey, you said that you had 100 ewes in your herd, you can't have shorn 120. So we have our shorn wool per animal, and our total clean will yield in kilograms and all right. So that's the same format as GAF as well, and I can add as many shearing units as we had for that year. And then we've got feed. So what are our primary feed inputs? Because I haven't enabled pasture as an activity type, I can't turn it on. I have to go on settings and turn on pasture, which behaves the same way as cropping. Let's say they're fed on crops for grazing, and we've got some block as well as a supplement. So over the year, we say just 1 tonne, and it was 9% urea in there. And then the feed breakdown is the crude protein, dry matter digestibility, and feed availability. There are default values in GAF, and so we'll just fill out with those default values. And we are done. So I'll quickly add, let's just put in fuel purchase. So let's make this one diesel. So it's not electricity purchase, non-renewable. Cool. And let's say I've bought some hay, 13 tons of hay. So this is where all of our buying of things happens. And once again, we'll be working with lifecycles to integrate their product database, so we get more options when it comes to calculating emissions of Scope 3 stuff. But these purchases are just purchases at the moment. They haven't been allocated to anything. And the reason why we did it that way is because a farmer might have just like quarterly diesel purchases on the BAS statement, and there's not going to be per information in that in those BAS integral receipts. So here I've got my allocation screen. So I've got my fuel type is diesel. The amount purchased was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 litres, and now I can divvy up this 100% across my herd. So the vast majority is probably going to be going to my 2 grains costs because of tractors, and maybe 0% went to our sheep because we're using petrol to ride our motorbikes to herd our flock.
Paul, we've just got a question in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
I think Felicity has run a calculation in the EAP and the GAF tool and is getting a discrepancy between the sheep data generated from GAF and the AIA calculator.
Yeah.
Did you want to comment about versioning or anything else that might sort of pop to mind? And obviously, Felicity, really happy to also take this offline and go through it with you, particularly if Paul doesn't have an answer off the top of his head right now.
Sure. So this is what's on the front end now is aligned to the latest Excel files that are on the PIC website. There was an update was it May? Like March. And then there was another major update before that in September. So if you're using an earlier Excel file, that could be one reason why there's discrepancies. When we do testing for accuracy between the calculator API, the platform, and the Excel files, we do one round of automated testing on the calculator. This is just with pre-input values. Then we do automated testing on the 2 rounds of automated testing with these pre-input values in the platform. And then we do 2 rounds of manual testing where myself and a tester in the engineering team grab the Excel file, grab the EAP, and then type in the numbers. So one of the things that's been really challenging from a livestock perspective is when we're entering in our livestock numbers, we have, and I can share the calculation for this, or the equation for this, is live weight gain in particular, head numbers for each season, because we've got the seasonal stuff in sheep beef. Getting those, because the data is entered monthly in here, but it's seasonal in the season of sheep beef, is you have to enter that information in the Excel file as if it were monthly. So live weight gain, you need to say this weight minus that weight divided by the number of days for that month, averaging that out. So when we were doing this testing, we found you had to be really diligent with a really strong eye for detail to make sure that the numbers that were being input here are the same as what was being input into the spreadsheet.
Yeah,
and
thanks. Sorry, if it's Felicity here, if I can just comment, like, so I have done that, and the meat, the emissions intensity for the per kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions per kilogram of meat isn't that far out of whack, but the wool is absolutely miles out, to the point that I have zero confidence in utilising it with growers at this stage.
Okay, sure. I mean, we can definitely dig into that more.
Yeah.
And if you're able to share your file, and we can test against it.
Yep, great.
That would be fantastic.
I've put
Cool.
my
I'll contact you
email in
after.
the
Thank you.
comments. Yeah,
Yeah,
if you
cool.
just email the email that's in the comments, we'll sort it out. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
Paul, we've got another question.
Yep.
Can data, example, fuel purchases from BAS statements be imported? And then there is another question about whether data from software like AgWorld and AgriMaster can be imported. So essentially importing data from other sources into the EAP.
Yep. Currently, there's no method of importing. We have played around with how that might work, and probably the most reliable way would be to provide an Excel template that can be downloaded, completed, and then re-uploaded for things like purchases. Think more complex data structures like livestock movement, probably not. With systems like AgWorld, AgriWeb, Traction Ag Conservice, and that sort of thing, we've had plenty of conversations with them about being able to interact with each other, and that becomes it's very much been a time and resource and implementation there. I think the will is certainly there, but coordinating that is an ongoing conversation. That said, those software providers could integrate right now with our calculator API. So the farmer wouldn't need the AIA platform. They could just stick with AgWorld, and then the calculations could be made from within AgWorld if they connected to the API. So we're really encouraging these software providers to do that. And it's Aggie, you and Sarah are very much involved in those conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, it is something that's on our roadmap as to whether, we do need to enable those integrations for those producers who do want to continue to use the EAP for free. But as mentioned, our goal was for those companies to use the engine within their own platforms, so producers don't have to move that data around. But we're certainly looking at it from both angles. We've got about 4 minutes, Paul. So
okay, cool. So what I'll do is I'll go to the one I prepared earlier and talk about the results. So some grains and Wagyu. So I've entered some information in here. I've got a sequestration planting, I've got a winter wheat crop, and I've got a Wagyu herd. I'll just quickly show you the difference, the improved interface for beef. So this one is capturing the same information as sheep, apart from lambing rates, but it's much nicer to look at. It's much more usable, and there's a new way of treating changes where we can say this was, births, deaths, how many there were, what was the weight of them, because that then impacts the average live weight of the rumen. So we're looking to introduce that across other livestock types. Pretty nice. And we worked with a farmer owns a large cattle operation in Queensland, and we worked with them and the business's CFO to develop that model, which has turned out quite nice. We're getting to the results. So by default, it's going to calculate all of the activities that are within this time frame. So once again, because gas 12-month thing, we've currently got this strict 12-month time frame. If you have activities that are overlapping or outside of that time frame, they're not going to be included. So have to be the same start and end date, start and month. So it's going to total it up here. I can drill into each commodity type and see the emissions there. So our scope 1 is 18.4, our scope 2 is 44, scope 3 is 88. I've allocated, I think, 50% or maybe 80% of my planting to my beef herd because beef emit more. And so our net emissions is 1,006, and we can see the breakdown as per GAF, the different contributing gases. So we've got enteric fermentation, CH4, lime, which has come from the crop that I allocated part of to the herd, so on and so forth. And see crop as well. And so we have our results, but we also have the data that's being posted to the calculator API. So if you wanted to compare your spreadsheet with the results here, this is where you can get a summary of those data points that are posted to the calculator. Look at the Excel file and go, okay, yes, our yield is whatever, the limestone that we put in was whatever, the fraction was 1. So it aids comparison to the GAF Excel files if you are doing survey testing. Cool, we have 1 minute left. I'll stop sharing. Any super quick questions?
Clint, you've got a question?
Back on there, Paul, does that also calculate arid country, like for Indigenous people when they want to do this type of stuff? Does that also benefit them in that data with all, the growth and without stock?
Right now, if you're able provide a bit more clarification on? So are you talking about sort of beef enterprises that might not have a sort of typical farming structure that you might find close to the coast?
Yeah, something similar to that. Yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
non-productive land around
Yeah.
on the farm. Yeah. So the
Yeah.
current.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the current calculation, and this is something that is on our roadmap. There is a calculation for sequestration which takes into account where you are located. We are looking at integration with FullCam, which will then use that FullCam calculation for that area of land. So that will be the sequestration calculation there for that non-productive land. It is certainly a very hot button topic that there is more research needed into this, and it is something we are very aware of, that the whole sequestration piece is very important to farmers, and we are looking at where that research is going, and we will continue to look at how to incorporate it. But the next step is to look at that FullCam integration and to give more and more details around that non-productive land.
There's also the farmer I mentioned who helped us with the updated live weight model, being from the north, has advocated strongly, and also other growers in Queensland in particular are quite keen on more research or more allowance for northern conditions as well. It's currently the vibe is that it's quite south oriented. So we're investigating what different pasture types and the different nutritional makeups of those different pasture types, what influence that will have on emissions as well. And that really speaks to sparser areas where cattle might be roaming compared to lush green pastures down in Gippsland in Victoria.
Okay, thank you.
Pauline?
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Paul. That was fantastic. I'm not across the assumptions that sit behind the generation of your numbers and things, but how do you factor in, or have you in the past, or do you, or can you factor in rainfall events, magnitude and frequency, and soil type factors? Do you consider those?
So rainfall is currently in GAF a yes or no question. Is it more than 600 millimetres? So if you're 599, then leaching and runoff is ignored. If you're 600, then suddenly leaching and runoff is factored in. So it's very, very coarse.
Okay.
So the soil type is factored in when it comes to calculating sequestration.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, the whole sequestration model is based off what Melbourne Uni have been able to grab from FullCam.
Okay.
And everyone's acknowledged that it's okay for getting here's my general sequestration, but if I want to get more detail, I need to be on the FullCam. Maybe mention that we already have been looking at the FullCam API. So the answer is, for sequestration, yes, soil type is included. It's very coarse. There's limited choices.
Mm-hmm.
And we're working towards more useful or more granular results using FullCam.
Okay, thank you.
We've got Morgans, and I think Douglas wants the microphone back.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Well, I'm delivering the CFOP workshops up in the northern half of Queensland, and one of the big constraints, I guess, is in the GAF calculators. They purely use north of the Tropic of Capricorn, and the detail there right across the board, like the country varies so much that we really have, well, the feedback from everywhere you go is that's just not good enough. Is there any thought of further research being done in Far North Queensland, or central to northern Queensland, or northern half of Australia, because it includes WA and NT, to get some more data that's more relevant, so we can actually, you know, be more specific. Like, I'm based on the Atherton Tablelands, and that's so different to the Cape and then the Gulf.
Yeah, definitely. So there's constant research happening, being undertaken by the RDCs, and Aggie in particular has been working with the RDCs to try and get this research in front of the technical advisory panel, so we can go, yes, this research is accepted enough for us to apply and put in. So it's not really the technical advisory panel's place to do this research around you know, what the impacts would be. It's more, they make a decision on whether it's material enough to the emissions result, and they rely on research from the likes of MLA. So the more that MLA hears from producers that this is important and they want this stuff addressed, the more likely it is that MLA will do the research or make it available. And this is just really an ongoing conversation that we're trying to bring this in. I'll give an example of something that is moving forward, is the presence of livestock around dams and the impact to emissions there. So there was discussions within the technical advisory panel that, you know, is the poo coming out of a cow, rolling into the water and nitrogen leaching? Is this going to be a big difference if we know that this happens or not? And the technical advisory panel were like, probably not. Let's just park it. But life cycles have put in a lot of work in calculating averages for that for different regions, and so we're moving with an Inspire actually to talk about their research and bringing that. So we're really trying to be we're trying to get research and new learnings from as many places as we can. Usually that starts with producers bringing this up, because a lot of producers are really enthusiastic about the topic and they want to see improvements, and we want to help that happen as well. So the more noise you make, feel free to contact Aggie or myself with some specifics as well. Then we can get that triage and the rest of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got stocking rates between a beast to the acre to a beast to 150 or 160 acres, you know, and it all works on exactly the same data. You know, and talking to Richard Eckard on one of the workshops, he said the manure management doubles as soon as you cross the Tropic of Capricorn, but you know, there's places with dung beetles and stuff like that, and others with not, and yeah, so surely the data is not consistent right across. So, and this is where the problem lies. So
yeah, and we just need to acknowledge where these really coarse assumptions are causing the biggest discrepancies or causing the most, I guess, reputational damage to the results, and seeing that where can we find the right research to provide more detail, to provide more regionality, I guess.
Yeah.
Just working towards that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Douglas, back to you.
Right, thanks very much, Aggie, and thank you, Paul. I actually put my hand up to start with just to add a little bit to Clint's piece was about, and because you were talking about integrations with full cam and so on, and I wonder whether there's plans on your roadmap, and perhaps we might be able to share your roadmap if that's not private, about integrations with biodiversity measurements as well. for a more complete environmental accounting bit. It seems to be a moving piece of the puzzle at the moment. But I'd like to thank you both very much for your contribution today, and thank you, Aggie, as well, for making yourself available, or your inbox available, for future questions for all of our participants. I'd like to thank all of our partners and trainers. I'll just have a look how many we've kept online. I know some people have had to go, but we've still got more than 40 on the line. So thank you all very much for taking the time this morning. I'm sure you got a lot out of it. We will be distributing a recording and transcript of this meeting briefing via Carbon Central, and we'll also send out some details, including Aggie's contact for further questions if you haven't had your questions answered today. So I'd just like to once again thank AIA for making their time available, and thank all of you great participants for contributing to the webinar. I certainly found it enlightening, and I hope you all did as well.
Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
See you.